Informal organization. Interaction among people at work gives rise to a network of social relationships among employees called the informal organization. Informal organization emerges from within the formal organization when people interact beyond their official defined roles. When people have frequent contacts, they cannot be forced into a rigid formal structure. Rather, based on the interaction and friendship, they tend to form groups which show conformity in terms of interest. Examples of such groups formed with common interest may be those who take part in cricket matches on Sundays, meet in the cafeteria for coffee, are interested in dramatics, etc. Informal organizations have no written rules, is fluid in form and scope, and does not have fixed lines of communication. The table in the next page compares the informal conversation with the formal organization to provide better understanding of both types. Informal organization can be better understood with the help of the following features. A. An informal organization originates from within the formal organization as a result of personal interaction among the employees. These standards of behavior evolve from group norms rather than officially laid down rules and regulations. C. Independent channels of communication without specified directions or flow of information are developed by group members. It emerges spontaneously and is not deliberately created by the management. Informal organization. An informal organization is an aggregate of interpersonal relationship without any conscious purpose but which may contribute to joint results. Chester Bernard. Informal organization is a network of personal and social relationships not established or required by the formal organization but arising spontaneously as people associate with one another. Keith Davis. E. It is not a definite it it has no definite structure or form because it is a complex network of social relationship among members. Advantages. The informal organization offers many benefits. Important among them are given below. A. Prescribed lines of communication are not followed. Thus, the informal organization leads to faster spread of information as well as quick feedback. B. It helps to fulfill the social needs of the members and allows them to find the like minded people. This enhances their job satisfaction since it gives them a sense of belongingness in the organization. C. It contributes towards fulfillment of organizational objectives by compensating for inadequacies in the formal organization. For example, employees' reactions towards plans and policies can be tested through the informal network. Disadvantages. The informal organization has certain disadvantages. Some of them are as following. Formal and informal organization, a comparative view. Basis, formal organization, informal organization. Meaning, structure of authority, relationship created by the management, network and social relationships arising out of interactions among employees. Origin arises as a result of company rules and policies, arises as a result of social interaction. Authority arises by virtue of position in management, arises out of personal qualities. Behavior it is directed by rules. There is no set of behavior, uh, behavior pattern. Flow of communication. Communication takes place through the scalar chain. Flow of communication is not through a planned route. It can take place in any direction. Nature rigid, flexible. Leadership managers are leaders. Leaders may or may not be managers, they are chosen by the group. A. When an informal organization spreads rumors, it becomes a destructive force and goes against the interest of the formal organization. B. The management may not be successful in implementing changes in the informal organization, opposes them. Such resistance to change may delay or restrict growth. C. It pursues members to conform to group expectations. This can be harmful to the organization if the norms set by the group are against organizational interest. Informal organization cannot be altogether eliminated. Thus, it would be in the best interest of the organization if the existence of such groups is recognized and the roles that their members play are identified. The knowledge of such groups can be used to gather their support and consequently lead to improved organizational performance. Such groups can also provide useful communication channels instead of confronting them. The management should skillfully take advantage of both the formal and the informal organizations so the work continues smoothly. Delegation. A manager, no matter how capable he is, cannot manage to do every task on his own. The volume of work makes it impractical for him to handle it all by himself. As a consequence, if he desires to meet the organizational goals, focus on objectives, and ensure that all work is accomplished, he must delegate authority. Delegation refers to the downward transfer of authority from a superior to a subordinate. It is a prerequisite to the efficient functioning of an organization because it enables a manager to use his time on high priority activities. It also satisfies the subordinates' needs for recognition and provides them with opportunities to develop and exercise initiative. Delegation helps a manager to extend his area of operations, as without it, his activities would be restricted to only what he himself can do. However, delegation does not mean abdication. The manager shall still be accountable for the performance of the assigned task. Moreover, the authority granted to a subordinate can be taken back and redelegated to another person. Thus, irrespective of the extent of delegated authority, the manager shall still be accountable to the same extent as before delegation. Delegation. Delegation is the process a manager follows in dividing the work assigned to him so that the performance that part which only he which only he because of his unique organizational placement can perform effectively and so that he can get others to help with what remains. Lewis Allen. Delegation of authority merely means the granting of authority to subordinates to operate within the prescribed limits. Theo Heyman. Elements of delegation. According to Lewis Allen, delegation is the entrustment of responsibility and authority to another and the creation of accountability for performance. A detailed analysis of Lewis Allen's definition brings to light the following essential elements of delegation. 1. Authority. Authority refers to the right of an individual to command his subordinates and to take action within the scope of his position. The concept of authority arises from the established scale chain which links the various job positions and levels of an organization. Authority also refers to the right to take decisions inherent in a managerial position to tell people what to do and expect them to do it. In the formal organization, authority originates by virtue of the individual's position, and the extent of authority is highest at the top management level and reduces successively as we go down the corporate ladder. Thus, authority flows from top to bottom. That is, the superior has authority over the subordinate. Authority relationship helps to maintain order in the organization by giving the managers the right to exact obedience and give directions to the workforce under them. Authority determines the superior subordinate relationship, wherein the superior communicates his decision to the subordinate, expecting compliance from him, and the subordinate executes the decision as per the guidelines of the superior. The extent to which a superior can exact compliance also depends on the personality of the superior. It must be noted that authority is restricted by law and the rules and regulations of the organization, which limits its scopes. However, as we go higher up in the management hierarchy, the scope of authority increases. 2. Responsibility. Responsibility is the obligation of a subordinate to properly perform the assigned duty. It arises from a superior subordinate relationship because the subordinate is bound to perform the duty assigned to him by the superior. Thus, responsibility flows upwards, that is, a subordinate will always be responsible to his superior. An important consideration is an important consideration to be kept in view with respect to both authority and responsibility is that when the employee is given responsibility for a job, he must also be given the degree of authority necessary to carry it out. Thus, for effective delegation, the authority granted must be commensurate with the assigned responsibility. If authority granted is more than responsibility, it may lead to misuse of authority. And if responsibility assigned is more than the authority, it may make a person ineffective. 3. Accountability. Delegation of authority undoubtedly empowers an employee to act for his superior, but the superior would still be accountable for the outcome. Accountability implies being answerable for the final outcome. Once authority has been delegated and responsibility accepted, one cannot deny accountability. It cannot be delegated and flow upwards, that is, a subordinate will be accountable to a superior for satisfactory performance of work. It indicates that a manager has to ensure the proper discharge of duties by his subordinates. It is generally enforced through regular feedback on the extent of work accomplished. The subordinate will be expected to explain the consequences of his actions or omission. Overview of the elements of delegation. Basis: authority, responsibility, accountability. Meaning: right to command, obligation to perform an assigned task, answerability for outcome of the assigned task. Delegation: cannot be delegated, cannot be entirely delegated, cannot be delegated at all. Origin: arises from formal position, arises from delegated authority, arises from responsibility. Flow: flows downwards from superior to subordinate, flows upwards from subordinate to superior, flows upwards from subordinate to superior. In conclusion, it can be stated that while authority is delegated, responsibility is assumed, accountability is imposed. Responsibility is derived from authority, and accountability is derived from responsibility. Importance of delegation. Delegation ensures that the subordinates perform tasks on behalf of the manager, thereby reducing the workload and providing him with more time to concentrate on important matters. Effective delegation leads to the following benefits: Effective management by empowering the employees, the managers are able to function more efficiently as they get more time to concentrate on important matters. Freedom from doing routine work provides them with the opportunities to excel in new areas. 2. Employee development. As a result of delegation, employees get more opportunities to utilize their talent, and this may give rise to latent abilities in them. It allows them to develop those skills which will enable them to perform complex tasks and assume those responsibilities which will improve their career prospects. It makes them better leaders and decision makers. Thus, delegation helps by preparing better future managers. Delegation empowers the employees by providing them with the chance to use their skills, gain experience, and develop themselves for higher positions. 3. Motivation of employees. Delegation helps in developing the talents of the employees. It also has psychological benefits. When a superior entrusts a subordinate with a task, it is not merely the sharing of work, but involves trust on the superior's part and commitment on the part of the subordinate. Responsibility for work builds the self esteem of the employee and improves his confidence. He feels encouraged and tries to improve his performance further. 4. Facilitation of growth. Delegation helps in the expansion of an organization by providing a ready workforce to take up leading positions in new ventures. Trained and experienced employees are able to play significant roles in the launch of new projects by replicating the work echoes that have absorbed from existing units in the newly set up branches. 5. Basis of management hierarchy. Delegation of authority establishes superior subordinate relationships, which are the basis of hierarchy of management. It is the degree and flow of authority which determines who has to report to whom. The extent of delegated authority also decides the power that each job position enjoys in the organization. 6. Better coordination. The element of delegation, namely authority, responsibility, and accountability, helps to define the powers, duties, and answerability related to the various positions in the organization. This helps to avoid overlapping of duties and duplication of efforts as it gives a clear picture of the work being done at various levels. Such clarity in reporting relationships help in developing and maintaining effective coordination amongst the departments, levels, and functions of management. Thus, delegation is a key element in effective organizing. Decentralization. In many organizations, the top management plays an active role in taking all decisions, while there are others in which this power is given to even the lower levels of management. Those organizations in which decision making authority lies with the top management are termed as centralized organizations, whereas those in which such authority is shared with lower levels are decentralized organizations. Decentralization explains the manner in which decision making responsibilities are divided amongst hierarchical levels. Put simply, decentralization refers to the delegation of authority throughout all the levels of organization. Decision making authority is shared with lower levels and is consequently placed nearest to the point of action. In other words, decision making authority is push down the chain of command. When decisions taken by the lower levels are numerous as well as important, an organization can be regarded as greatly decentralized. Centralization and decentralization. Centralization and decentralization are relative terms. as seen from the existing status of various business enterprises. An organization is centralized when decision making authority is retained by higher management levels, whereas it is decentralized when such authority is delegated. Complete centralization would imply concentration of all decision making functions at the apex of management hierarchy. Such a scenario would obviate the need for a management hierarchy. On the other hand, complete decentralization would imply the delegation of all decision making functions to the lower level of the hierarchy, and this would obviate the need for higher managerial positions. Both the scenarios are unrealistic. Decentralization. Decentralization refers to systematic efforts to delegate the lowest level of authority except that which can be exercised at central points. By Lewis Allen. Everything which goes to increase the importance of a subordinate's role is decentralization. Everything that goes to reduce it is centralization. An organization can never be completely centralized or decentralized. As it grows in size and complexities, there is a tendency to move towards decentralized decision making. This is because in large organizations, those employees who are directly and closely involved with certain operations tend to have more knowledge about them than the top management, which may only be indirectly associated with individual operations. Hence, there is a need for a balance between these coexisting forces. Thus, it can be said that every organization will be characterized by both centralization and decentralization. Importance. Decentralization is much more than a mere transfer of authority to the lower level of management hierarchy. It is a philosophy that implies selective dispersal of authority because it propagates the belief that people are competent, capable, and resourceful. They can assume the responsibility for the effective implementation of their decisions. Thus, this philosophy recognizes the decision maker's need of autonomy. The management, however, needs to carefully select those decisions which will be pushed down to lower levels and those that will be retained for higher levels. Table 4 provides a comparative look between delegation and decentralization. Decentralization is a fundamental step, and its importance can be understood from the following points. 1. Develops initiative among subordinates. Decentralization helps to promote self reliance and confidence among the subordinates. This is because when lower managerial levels are given freedom to take their own decisions, they learn to depend on their own judgment. It also keeps them in a state wherein they are constantly challenged and have to develop solutions for the various problems they encounter. A decentralization policy helps to identify those executives who have the necessary potential to become dynamic leaders. 2. Develops managerial talent for the future. Formal training plays an important role in equipping subordinates with skills that help them to rise in the organization, but equally important in the experience gained by handling assignments independently. Decentralization gives them a chance to prove their abilities and create a reservoir of qualified manpower who can be considered to fill up more challenging positions through promotions. It also helps to identify those who may not be successful in assuming greater responsibility. Thus, it is a means of management education as well as the opportunity for trained manpower to use its talent in real life situations. 3. Quick decision making. The management hierarchy can be looked upon as a chain of communication. In centralized organization, because every decision is taken by the top management, the flow of information is slow as it has to traverse many levels. Response also takes time. This reduces the speed of decision making and makes it difficult for an enterprise to adapt to dynamic operating conditions. In a decentralized organization, however, since decisions are taken at levels which are nearest to the point of action and there is no requirement of approval from many levels, the process is much faster. There are also less chances of information getting distorted because it doesn't have to go through long channels. Relief to top management. Decentralization diminishes the amount of direct supervision exercised by a superior over the activities of a subordinate because they are given the freedom to act and decide at albeit within the limits of the superior. Also, personal supervision is generally replaced by other forms of control, such as return on investment, etc. Decentralization also leaves the top management with more time, which they can devote to important policy decisions rather than occupying their time with both policy as well as operational decisions. In fact, decentralization is greatest when checking required on decisions taken by lower level of management is least. 5. Facilitates growth. Decentralization awards greater autonomy to the lower level of management as well as division or departmental heads. This allows them to function in a manner best suited to their department and foster a sense of competition amongst the departments. Consequently, with each department doing its best in a bid to outdo the other, the productivity levels increase and the organization is able to generate more returns which can be used for expansion purposes. 6. Better control. Decentralization makes it possible to evaluate performance at each level, and the departments can be individually held accountable for their results. The extent of achievement of organizational objectives, as well as the contribution of each department in meeting the overall objectives, can be ascertained. Feedback from all levels help to analyze variances and improve operations. In decentralization, one of the challenges is the accountability of performance. In response to the challenge, better control systems are being ev- evolved, such as the balanced scorecard and the management information system. Decentralization compels the management to innovative performance measures systems. As a conclusion, it must be noted that in spite of its benefits, decentralization should be applied with caution as it can lead to organizational disintegration if the department starts to operate on their own guidelines, which may be contrary to the interest of the organization. Decentralization must always be balanced with centralization in areas of major policy decisions. Decentralization, a strength. The McNeil name has been associated with the manufacturing and sale of pharmaceutical products since 1876, when Robert McNeil opened his first retail drug outlet in Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania, growing as a producer of prescription pharmaceuticals. McLean Laboratories Inc. was incorporated in the US in 1933 and became member of the Johnson and Johnson family of companies in 1959. McNeil Consumer Healthcare began operations in Canada in an existing administrative Johnson and Johnson facility in Guelph, Ontario in 1980. McNeil Consumer Healthcare non-prescription pharmaceutical products in Guelph, Ontario is member of the Johnson and Johnson family of companies in Canada. An important difference between the Johnson and Johnson and most other companies is the concept concept of decentralized management. Instead of operating as one large multi-billion-dollar corporation, Johnson and Johnson is operated as 190 smaller companies, each focused on a specific medical or product franchise and or geographic area, with each affiliate generating multiple options for growth. Through decentralization, we combine the advantages of being big with the agility and focus of smaller firms. Decentralization enables each company to stay close to its customer, maintain short lines of communication with customers and employees, and accelerate the development of talent. The Johnson and Johnson Merck Consumer Pharmaceuticals company also operates from a Woodlawn Road facility in Guelph. If you were the manager, would you decentralize knowing that it would mean dispersal of decision making authority? Okay, delegation and decentralization, a comparative overview. Basis, delegation, decentralization. Nature, delegation is a compulsory act because no individual can perform all tasks on their own. Decentralization is an optional policy decision. It is done at the discretion of the top management. Freedom of action. More control by superiors, hence less freedom to take own decisions. Less control over executive, hence greater freedom of action. Status. It is a process followed to share tasks. It is the result of the policy decisions of the top management. Scope. It has narrow scope as it is limited to superior and his immediate subordinate. It has wide scope as it implies extension of delegation to the lowest level management. Purpose: to lessen the burden of the manager, to increase the role of the subordinates in the organization by giving them more autonomy.